All right, so have you ever, glanced up at your roof and spotted those kind of icky patches? You know what I mean? Like green, gray, maybe even a bit of algae creeping around. Ever thought, should I even bother with that?
Well, today we're diving deep into a surprisingly effective solution for just that problem. We're talking about anti-moss copper tape.
Yeah, this stuff's pretty cool. We're going to explore how it works, why it's a smart move for your roof, and how ridiculously easy it is to install yourself.
It's all about utilizing natural processes to keep your roof in tip-top shape.
Exactly. We've got some great info lined up for you. We dug into detailed product specs and a super insightful article breaking down the science and all the pluses of this copper tape.
Should be pretty interesting.
Our mission today, to give you a crystal clear picture of how copper can naturally protect your roof and potentially save you a ton of time, money, and headaches down the line.
Sounds good.
So let's kick things off with the basics. Why is a bit of moss on your roof even a problem in the first place?
It's definitely more than just an eyesore, that's for sure. While a touch of moss might give your house that, I don't know, rustic look, if you let it run wild, it can really mess with your roof structure over time.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Think of moss like a super absorbent sponge. It just sucks up moisture and holds it right against your roofing materials.
And that dampness can't be good, right? Especially with all the crazy weather swings we get these days.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. Those freeze-thaw cycles, they wreak havoc. The water trapped by the moss expands when it freezes and then contracts when it thaws. And guess what? That constant push and pull puts a ton of stress on your tiles and shingles.
Leading to, as I'm sure many of our listeners have guessed, cracks.
Bingo. At first they're microscopic, barely visible. But give it time and those tiny fissures can turn into some serious damage. And then your roof's ability to keep the element out, well, let's just say it takes a major hit.
Yeah, not a good situation for any homeowner.
Not at all. And it's not just about cracks either. Moss can also clog up your roof's drainage system.
Oh, right, I hadn't thought of that.
It creates these little blockages and channels that redirect rainwater, preventing it from flowing off your roof like it's supposed to.
So then the water pools up in places it shouldn't.
Precisely. And that can lead to rot, especially if you have any wooden structural parts in your roof.
Definitely not something you want happening up there.
No, definitely not. You want those supports to be strong and stable.
Okay, so moss is way more than just an aesthetic issue. It's a potential structural nightmare waiting to happen.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now let's get to the good stuff. This copper tape solution. How does simply sticking a strip of metal on your roof actually stop moss in its tracks?
Well, this is where the science gets kind of cool. It's all about a natural process called oxidation. When copper is exposed to air and rain, it releases these teeny tiny particles called Q ions.
Q2 plus ions. So those are the moss-busting heroes here.
You got it. These copper ions are basically kryptonite for moss and algae. They can't stand the stuff.
Makes sense.
So picture this. It rains, the water hits the copper tape, picks up these ions, and carries them down your roof.
Like a little delivery system.
Exactly. And that creates this invisible shield that stops moss and algae from taking root.
That's pretty clever. A natural pesticide that spreads with every rainfall.
You could say that, yeah. And get this, the process is self-regenerating. The copper forms a protective layer called a patina.
Oh, like the green stuff you see on old copper statues?
You know it. And that patina, it's not just sitting there. It slowly erodes over time due to weathering.
So it's constantly renewing itself.
That's the beauty of it. And as it erodes, guess what? More of those moss-fighting copper ions are released.
That is brilliant. So the tape isn't just a one-time fix. It's constantly working to protect your roof.
You got it. And the erosion rate varies depending on your environment. Like in a city, it might be around 0.8 micrometers per year, which is super thin, like way thinner than a hair. But in an industrial area, it could be closer to 2.0 micrometers per year.
Still incredibly tiny, though, so the tape is working its magic for years and years without just disappearing.
Exactly. It's long-lasting protection without any harsh chemicals. Totally natural.
Which brings us to our next point. Why choose copper tape over those traditional chemical treatments?
Well, the biggest difference is the type of protection you get. Chemical treatments, you're essentially blasting your roof with a moss-killing solution.
Right, but you have to keep doing it over and over.
Exactly. It's a temporary fix. You spray, it works for a while, and then you got to do it all over again. Copper tape, on the other hand, is a set-it-and-forget-it solution. You install it once, and those copper ions keep working for you year after year.
So it's a one-time investment for long-term protection.
Precisely. And that translates to some serious savings for you in the long run.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think about it. You're paying for those chemical treatments every year or two versus installing copper tape that can last for decades.
The costs really add up over time.
They do. And let's not forget the environmental impact. Some of those chemical treatments could be pretty nasty.
Oh, right. They can seep into the soil and water.
Exactly. Not good for your garden, your pets, or the local wildlife. Copper tape is a much eco-friendlier option. It's just natural oxidation doing its thing.
So you don't have to worry about harmful chemicals leaching into the environment?
Nope, just naturally occurring copper ions, which are actually beneficial in trace amounts.
That's a big win for anyone who cares about the planet.
Absolutely. And remember how we talked about the patina getting better over time?
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating.
Well, that means the copper tape actually becomes more effective the longer it's up there. It's like it settles into a rhythm, providing consistent protection year after year.
Okay, I'm definitely sold on the why copper tape is a good idea, but let's talk about the how. How difficult is it to actually install this stuff?
Honestly, it's a pretty straightforward process, even for someone who's not super handy. But there are a few key steps you'll want to follow to make sure it works properly and lasts a long time.
All right, let's break it down. First things first, what about prepping the roof?
You absolutely need to start with a clean slate, literally. Make sure the area where you're putting the tape is completely clean and dry. Get rid of any moss, debris, leaves, anything that might get in the way.
The tape sticks properly. Makes sense.
Yep. And keep an eye on the weather. You'll want at least 48 hours of dry conditions and temperatures above 5 degrees Celsius.
Why the temperature requirement?
The tape has this butyl adhesive on the back, which is super strong and waterproof, but it works best when it's a bit warmer.
Gotcha. Clean roof, decent weather. What's next?
Now you need to figure out where the tape is going. The sweet spot is just below the ridge line of your roof, not on the ridge itself,
Okay, why is that?
because that's where the rainwater tends to flow most consistently, and that helps to distribute those copper ions all over your roof.
Ah, so you're strategically placing it where the rain will do the work for you. Smart. What tools will I need for the job?
Not much, really. A roller is handy to make sure the tape sticks down well, a utility knife to trim it to size, and of course, don't forget your safety gear if you're going up on the roof.
Safety first, always.
Absolutely. Now, once you've prepped the roof, checked the weather, and planned your placement, it's time to stick the tape down. Most anti-moss tapes come with a protective backing. You peel that off as you go, pressing the tape firmly onto the roof.
And using the roller helps to get rid of any air bubbles.
Exactly. You want solid contact between the tape and the roof. If you're working in sections, overlap the edges by a couple of centimeters, just to make sure there are no gaps.
And that butyl adhesive you mentioned, that's what gives it the staying power, right?
Yep. Butyl is known for sticking to pretty much anything, including all the common roofing materials. Some tapes even have this honeycomb pattern on the back to make them extra flexible.
Oh, that's cool. So it can easily mold to the shape of your tiles or whatever you have?
Exactly. But again, make sure it's above 5 degrees Celsius for that adhesive to work its magic.
So basically, peel, stick, and roll. Any other tips for installation?
Aim for about 6 to 8 inches below the roof ridge when you're placing the strips, and make sure it's not blocking any natural drainage pathways.
Makes sense. You don't want to create any new water problems while you're solving the moss issue.
Exactly. And once the tape is up, it's pretty low maintenance. Just do a quick check every year, especially after any big storms, to make sure it's still sticking tight.
So just a visual inspection every now and then. Easy enough.
Yep. And keep those gutters clean. That helps the rainwater and the copper ions flow freely across the roof.
Gotcha. Now, are there any common mistakes people make when installing this themselves? Things to watch out for?
Oh yeah, definitely. One big one is installing when it's too cold. That butyl adhesive needs some warmth to really grab hold.
Makes sense.
Another mistake is not cleaning the roof properly beforehand. You want a smooth, debris-free surface for that tape to adhere to.
Right. And we talked about placement earlier. Don't put it right on the ridge.
Exactly. And don't skip on the pressure when you're applying it. Use that roller to make sure it's really stuck down. And lastly, watch those overlaps. Don't leave any gaps between the sections.
So attention to detail is key.
It definitely pays off in the long run.
All right, let's talk about the bottom line. You mentioned earlier that copper tape saves you money in the long term. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So yeah, the initial cost of copper tape might seem a bit higher than a single chemical treatment.
But you're not just paying for one treatment, are you?
Nope. With those chemical sprays, you're looking at 20, maybe even 30 treatments over the lifespan of your roof.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And when you factor in those repeat costs, copper tape starts to look like a real bargain. According to the sources we looked at, copper tape installation runs about 8 to 12 quid per meter.
Which includes the installation, right?
Yep. While those chemical treatments can set you back 4 to 6 quid a pop.
And you're doing that multiple times?
Every year or two, yeah. So the savings with copper tape really add up.
Plus, you're avoiding the potential cost of repairs if the moss does damage your roof.
Exactly. Cracked tiles, rot, all that stuff can get expensive fast. Copper tape helps you prevent those issues from happening in the first place.
So it's a smart investment.
Absolutely.
Now, all this sounds great in theory, but do we have any real-world examples of homeowners who've actually used copper tape and seen the results?
We do, and the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. One person we found actually wished they had known about copper tape sooner. They had dealt with moss problems and cracked tiles for years.
Oh, that's got to be frustrating.
I know, right? They finally installed copper tape after replacing their tiles, and now they're hoping for a fresh start and a moss-free future.
Good for them. Any other success stories?
Another homeowner said they expect to recoup their investment within the first year compared to what they were spending on annual cleaning and tile replacements.
That's a pretty quick return.
It is. And they also mentioned how easy it was to install and that their neighbors were now asking them about it.
So it's generating some buzz. What about other examples?
Someone in Leeds said their 15-year moss problem completely vanished within one season after installing copper tape.
Wow, that's impressive.
And a homeowner in Brighton, right on the coast, has had a moss-free roof for 5 years since installing the tape.
That's saying something, considering how much moss thrives in coastal areas.
It is. So yeah, the real-world results definitely back up the science.
It's a game changer for a lot of homeowners.
For sure.
Now let's tackle some of those burning questions people might have. First up, can you use copper tape on any type of roof?
That's a good question. It works great on most common materials like tiles and shingles, but you got to be careful with metal roofs
Why is that?
because of something called galvanic corrosion. It's a reaction that can happen when certain metals touch each other in the presence of moisture.
Ah, so it could actually damage the roof.
Yep. And for synthetic roofing materials, just make sure the surface is super clean for good adhesion.
What about the aesthetics? Will copper tape change the look of my roof?
The tape itself will develop a patina over time, changing from that copper color to a greenish blue.
Okay, but will it stain the actual roof tiles?
No, it shouldn't stain the tiles. And that color change doesn't affect how well it works.
That's good to know. Now, what about extreme weather? Will super hot or freezing temperatures mess with the tape's stickiness?
That blue adhesive is pretty tough. It's designed to handle a wide range of temperatures.
But you did mention that 5 degrees Celsius threshold for installation.
Right, that's for optimal initial adhesion. Once it's on there good and solid, extreme heat or cold shouldn't be a trouble.
So it can handle whatever Mother Nature throws at it. Now, here's a practical question. Can you paint over the copper tape to make it blend in better?
I wouldn't recommend that. The copper needs to be exposed to the air and rain to release those copper ions.
Oh, right. Painting it would block that whole process.
Exactly. Wouldn't work properly.
Gotcha. Last question. If you needed to remove the copper tape for any reason, how would you do it without damaging the roof?
The best way is to use a heat gun on a low setting to warm up the adhesive.
Ah, so it peels off easier.
Yep, then you can slowly peel it back. And if there's any sticky residue left behind, you can usually clean it up with mineral spirits.
Good to know. Now let's geek out on the science for a bit. We keep talking about this patina. What exactly is it, and why is it so important for protecting the roof?
All right, so the patina is this natural protective layer that forms on copper when it's exposed to the elements. It's made up of these alkaline copper salts.
Which are?
Things like copper carbonate, copper sulfate, and if you're near the ocean, copper chloride. This layer basically acts like a shield, protecting the chopper underneath from further corrosion.
That's why those old copper roofs and statues can last for centuries,
You
right?
got it. And the color of the patina changes over time. It starts as a reddish brown, then turns darker brown, and eventually develops that classic green color we all associate with old copper.
And how long does that whole process take?
It depends on the environment. It could be as quick as 4 years in coastal areas or as long as 30 years in rural areas.
So it's a slow and steady transformation.
Exactly. And as the patina slowly erodes, it releases those moss-fighting ions onto your roof.
And that's what keeps the moss at bay.
Precisely. The rainwater carries those copper salts down, coating the roof with this thin layer of alkaline compounds. And those compounds are what prevent the moss and lichens from growing.
It's like a natural defense mechanism.
It is, and it's completely natural and environmentally friendly. Every time it rains, your roof gets a fresh dose of protection.
It's amazing how nature provides these solutions right under our noses.
It really is.
So to sum it all up for our listeners, what's the main takeaway here?
Anti-moss copper tape is a natural, effective, and long-term solution for keeping your roof free of moss, lichen, and algae.
And it's a proactive way to protect your investment and avoid costly repairs down the line,
Exactly. You install it once, and it just keeps working for you.
with the added bonus of being environmentally friendly. You know, it makes you wonder, if copper can protect itself and our roofs in this way, what other building materials might have similar self-protective qualities?
That's a good question.
Maybe there are even more sustainable and low-maintenance solutions out there just waiting to be discovered. It's definitely something to think about.
I agree.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope you learned something new and maybe even got inspired to try out this copper tape solution for yourself. Until next time, happy roofing.
See you next time.